Good morning guys, welcome back to the vlog. This is a technical one. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. It just basically goes into the details on what kit that I use to fly around the world, and it's just basically me explaining that. So if you have any questions, just drop me a line either in the comments or an email to james@jamesketchell.net. I hope you enjoy this. I've got some fun vlogs coming soon. As I say, this is really a technical one. But I've been wanting to make it for a while. So if you like flying and you're kind of interested in the technical aspects of how I got around the world and what kit I used, this video will be for you. Okay, enjoy. So the first thing we'll look at is the navigation. I get asked a lot of questions around what apps did I use, what was the Garmin in front of me, is that a Horizon that you've got? So we'll look at that now. So I had the standard iPad. It's an iPad mini that I had on my left knee. And in terms of apps for that, I had Runway HD, which is very, very good. And I used Garmin Pilot. Now they were the two main apps that I used. In America, I used 4Flight because that had I used Runway HD and 4Flight. The thing with 4Flight is it had a radar overlay, which was quite useful. I was often dodging around showers and rain and things. But where in the countries that Runway HD didn't have any charts, you'd use Garmin Pilot, and I have to say, that was extremely good. Both Runway HD and Garmin Pilot are really good, but they're slightly different. So all of Russia was Garmin Pilot, and then all of really from Canada back across the Atlantic, Greenland, Iceland, back down to the UK was Garmin Pilot. As soon as I got back into the UK, I switched over to Runway HD. I really like Runway HD. Just like the charts, and it's very easy to use. So that's what I had in terms of navigation on my iPad. But I also had the Garmin 795. The Garmin 795 is a really good bit of kit, and this would sit in the panel here, and yeah, basically you just plug in your waypoints and away you go. Now, one of the things that I did have, which was really useful, was the Garmin GDL50. So this device here would link to the Garmin 795, and I'd have it's that gave me the Horizon, which is very, very useful, and it would also give me ADS-B in or out, I can't remember, but I had full ADS-B on the 795. So when I'm looking at the 795, I can see traffic around me. Ultimately, I mean, in Russia, the only things I could see were like 35,000 feet above me. It's just mostly airliners. But in America, it was very, very useful because there's a lot of traffic out there, depending on where you are. When you're around sort of cities and things, and closer to built up areas, so that it would all display quite nicely. So that was very, very useful. So that was my that was basically my navigation setup, and the actual nav for getting around the world was actually really quite simple. So that's navigation. Let's take a look at the camera setup that I used. We'll do that now. So I had 3 GoPros. They would be connected. One would be up here. I had one here looking back at me. I also had a seatbelt mount as well. So this would connect to the seatbelt, and actually kind of, in the end, it was that worked quite well. And for audio, well, I've now found a new solution for audio, but for initially when I was going around the world, in my helmet I just had a microphone that was, we'll look at the helmet in a minute, but I just had a microphone that was taped inside the ear cup, and that basically recorded all the audio. But now, we can look at this now. I've picked up a device. This is incredible. So that plugs in here, and this plugs in to the GoPro. and now you're actually recording audio directly from the aircraft instead of a microphone through the ear cup, if you like, on the helmet. And yeah, that's what you've just listened to, and it is really, really good. I'm really happy with that setup. You do need to have a microphone adapter if you're going to run a GoPro Hero 7, which is this here, but the adapter that you need is different for a GoPro Hero 4. So I'm going to link in the description. It's a company called In-Flight Technology. So it's probably easier that I just put the link for this cable in the description. I would highly suggest you call the company to absolutely make sure that you're buying the right cable. I wouldn't want you to buy this and then it's not right, because actually it turns out you don't have a GoPro 7, you have something else, and then it doesn't work. But In-Flight Technology, this is SKU 430, and it's running a GoPro Hero 7 Black, and the audio is amazing. So that's how I recorded the audio. That's how I'm doing it now. And when I did it, when I went around the world, it was just a very cheap microphone that went in the ear. But it seemed to work quite well. So these are the two cameras. So if you're not sure which camera you've got, that is a Hero 7 Black. That is a Hero 4. So slight difference, but they're very, very good. Now, one of the main advantages with the Hero 7, especially the black one, it has stabilization. So you can put it on the mast at the back and you won't get any vibration. Actually unbelievable. Really, really good. They've just released a new one, a Hero 8, which I need to get hold of and test. So that's that. Let's have a look at some of the sat phone technology that I used. So I took 2 satellite phones with me around the world. I took an Iridium Extreme, and this is wrapped up in a waterproof like sandwich Ziploc bag at the moment. I always carried this on me. So this was, and it always had an active SIM card in it as well, because there's no point in having a sat phone and then you need to use it, and then the SIM card is not active or has no minutes on it. That's pretty obvious though. So that's an Iridium Extreme. It's a good piece of kit. But the main sat phone that I used for the aircraft when I wanted to make calls, because I had a setup, I was able to make calls from the aircraft. Now I'm going to tell you how I did that in a second. But the main sat phone that I used for that was this here. It's called an Iridium Go. Now this is an amazing bit of kit. It basically works through, it has satellite technology in it. It talks to the satellites and it gets your satellite connection, but it basically turns your you talk through your mobile phone. So it links via Bluetooth to your phone, and then via an app you then make your calls. Now, one of the things that I could do, the main advantage I had was I had a little Bluetooth device that I linked to the aircraft that enabled me to link up my phone, and it's this here. It's the Pilot PA86A-BT. I will put a link in the description. This is absolutely a wicked piece of kit. So this would connect to the aircraft. Would connect to the aircraft, and then the other end would basically just connect to the helmet, and I would switch it on, and via Bluetooth it would talk to my phone. So my phone via Bluetooth would be connected to the aircraft. So I'm flying along, and if I had signal, I could make telephone calls, I could receive calls. And actually, when I flew back across the Atlantic from Canada to well, really all the way from Canada home, I was listening to audiobooks. There was basically no one to talk to. I was monitoring certain frequencies. Now, the good thing is with this bit of kit, the radio will always cut in over this. So if you're on the telephone, or you're listening to an audiobook, or even music, or whatever you're doing, if the radio cuts in and someone wants to talk to you, or there's a transmission or something, that will always cut over the call or whatever you're doing. So that's quite useful. But there was no one to listen to, or really, well, there was certainly no one to talk to when I flew back across the Atlantic. So using that device there I listen to audiobooks. I didn't listen to music, I just listened to audiobooks. I actually listened to Elon Musk's, one of his books, basically. I listened to it, it was pretty good. It kind of, it stopped me listening to the engine and wondering if it's going to stop, but luckily it didn't. So I'll put the link in the description for that. That is a brilliant piece of kit. It usually comes with standard GA pins, but I had mine changed to the Binder connections for my helmet. So that's how I connected up my phone, and that's kind of like a basic sort of filming camera setup. The camera that I'm filming on now is a Sony RX100 Mark VI. It's quite a good camera. It's quite expensive, but it's a pretty good camera. It's compact and it worked well for what I wanted. It would be better if it had a built-in microphone jack so you could put an external mic on, but it doesn't, but it's good enough. One thing that I thought I would show you is my knee pad. On my right knee I have my Flyboys knee pad here. Again, quite a nice little bit of kit. A lot of people were asking me where did I get this from. It looks nice. It's just a Flyboys gear for pilot. I'll put the link in the description. These are really cheap. You should get one if you want one. They're quite useful, quite comfortable as well, and they would just attach to my leg. So what we can do now is, probably one of the most important bits of kit was the tracker. So I have my little Garmin InReach Mini. Now it's this device here that tracked me, that enabled you guys to track me the whole way around the world. Now there's different subscription levels. I paid £80 a month, and this updated every 2 minutes. And that was important because my flight support team, I'll talk to you about them in a minute, they would sit there and watch the tracker, and updating every 2 minutes was the best that we could do. And if I didn't have it updating every 2 minutes, I think it updated as standard every 10 minutes. But 10 minutes is too long. A lot can happen in 10 minutes in an aircraft. So we had to have it updated every 2 minutes. So it was £80 a month to have this subscription. I've cancelled that subscription now, or I've lowered the level. I don't need it so much now. But Garmin InReach Mini, and that was linking to the website and the Garmin website. I had two websites, the 060 and the Garmin Pilot. Not Garmin Pilot, Garmin InReach, sorry. So that worked really well, and I put a little cable tie on this because I had this connected to my suit. Initially I had the Garmin stored in the aircraft, but then I realised I actually wanted it stored on me. If I ever had an accident and I was thrown out of the aircraft, I want it on me, not the aircraft. And certainly for when I was crossing the water sections, I wanted it attached to me and not the aircraft. So that's how I did the tracking. It's very simple, to be honest. So we'll now look at some of the safety equipment that I had. This is my life raft here. This was custom made by a company called Survitec. They did an amazing job for me. It's quite heavy. Well, for what it is, it's not that heavy, but it's heavy for a gyro. And this would sit under my right leg. Wasn't particularly comfortable, but it was peace of mind having it. And I went on a course, sort of like a sea survival course prior to leaving, because it's actually a bit harder than you think to get into these life rafts, even in a pool, in a relaxed environment. There's a bit of a technique to getting in and out of a life raft. So I went on a course, and luckily I didn't need to use it, but I had it there in case. Now one of the things, I had a standard Crew Saver life jacket. Here we go, Crew Saver. To be really honest, any life jacket will do the trick. I wanted one that was manually inflated. I didn't want one that if it started raining hard, it would go off because it thought I was in the water. So I went with a manual activation one. This was very, very good. I also had a PLB, a personal, an EPIRB, which is an emergency positioning indicating radio beacon. This here, this would sit in my flight suit. So I had an immersion suit. Again, Survitec did an incredible job of making that for me. It was quite tight around the neck. It's probably my fault. I probably ate too much while I was away, but it was quite tight on me by the time I kind of got home and was using it for the last legs. but it is so good, extremely buoyant. Like, I remember I was in the pool testing it, and it's so buoyant that I couldn't really keep my legs down. It was unbelievable. Really good bit of kit, and I would highly recommend anyone who's doing any flying over water for prolonged periods of time, don't even think about doing that without an immersion suit. It would be almost suicidal. That will keep you alive, and it will keep you afloat, that's for sure. So Savitech made my immersion suit. It's very good. Let's have a look at the helmet now. So I had an Alpha Eagle helmet. These are quite expensive, but I was very lucky. A chap called Gary gave it to me. He had it, and he wasn't able to fly anymore, I think for a medical reason. So he very kindly gave that to me, and I flew around the world in it. Now these helmets, they do look good. It's like that classic fighter pilot style helmet. So it was a nice helmet to use. I'd probably look, if I was going around the world again, this does not have noise reduction inside, you know, like the Bose do. If I was doing another long journey again, I would absolutely have noise reduction, because I think it's worth it. It was comfortable, it worked, and obviously it looks good. But one of the things that I realized is when you're flying day in, day out, it's not really about what it looks like, it's how well it works. And you know, if you're flying every now and then, yeah, go for looks, you want to look good, right? But if you're flying day in, day out, and you're on a massive mission, you want something that's fit for purpose in terms of it's very comfortable and it's not so loud. It's quite loud with this helmet, where there are other helmets out now that have noise reduction built in, and I do believe they're quite good. So that's something that I want to look at as well. Now you can have it fitted in this helmet, and I reached out to a company in the UK to try and have that. I was even going to buy it, but I didn't. They weren't that. This particular company that I reached out to were not that helpful, so I opted not to spend the money on that. So, but I would certainly look at that now. So one of the questions that I get a lot is the fuel setup that I used. It was actually a standard fuel setup made by Magni. It wasn't an external company. It was a tank that Magni made that sat in the back here. It was 110 litres, and it was gravity fed into the main tank. Now I had a really useful little lever. I'm going to show you it now, and I would just simply open the valve, and I could literally, it would be very slow, but I could almost watch my fuel gauge come up. So this valve here, that's now, oh shit, you can see I opened the valve up and a bit of fuel came out. So it was just a very simple setup that just sat in the rear seat. It was standard. Magni made it for me. It's actually their crop spraying tank, I believe, and it's just plumbed in to the main tank. Now there is a company called Turtle Pack that do make some really good setups. You could look at running one of those as well. That would work well. But I quite like the fact that mine was a hard tank. It was so simple, it was so easy. I put fuel in it, I didn't need to think about it. I would just open and close the valve, that was it. So that's really all there is to the fuel setup that I had. It was quite straightforward. Okay, so we've looked at some of the kit. I'm going to answer some of the questions that generally that I get now, and I had a fantastic email asking me loads of stuff, and I thought I'd just go through this because it's so much easier to do this. So here we go. How long did it take to plan the expedition? I spent 3 years working to plan this, to pull all the funding together, etc. How many flying hours had you completed prior to leaving? So I actually didn't have that much experience. I had 200 hours flying gyros before I left to fly around the world. Now a lot of people would say that's pretty crazy, but it was enough, and the flying was not actually the hardest part of this trip. And I had a lot of good people around me offering support, etc. What requirements did you have for your gyro? Why did you choose a Magni? Was it commercial choice or personal choice? So the Magni gyro was what I learned to fly in. I cannot speak highly enough about this. I had one puncture when I went around the world and I snapped a brake cable. That was it. This aircraft never missed a beat. I cannot speak highly enough about it. I bought the aircraft. It wasn't given to me. It took years to get the funding together to buy it. Another reason why I chose the Magni family were incredibly supportive, and just wonderful people. So that's why I went with the Magni. Why did you choose an open cockpit? Did you consider enclosed cockpit? Yes, but the M16 with the open cockpit is probably the most stable gyrocopter out there in the world. Gyroplane, gyrocopter, call it whatever you want. Also as well, if I needed to get out of it quickly, if I was ever unfortunate enough to ditch in water, you'll get out of this a lot quicker and a lot easier than you would an enclosed cockpit. And for most of the flights around the world, it was actually quite warm. It was only cold up in Siberia and Greenland, and it wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be. If I'm really honest with you, the cold wasn't a problem. That's a good question. With the open cockpit, you are very exposed. It may be a daft question, but did you ever suffer from a fear of heights during your training or on the tour? I never suffered from a fear of heights. Actually, I really enjoyed it. But it's just, as the more time you spend in your aircraft, the easier it gets and the more used to it you get. Perhaps if you were first starting your training and you look over the side and you're a couple of thousand feet to the ground, it might be a bit daunting, but it's just time in the aircraft really. What approvals, visas did you need to obtain prior to your expedition from the various countries you flew through? Did you have any problems? Okie dokie. So the next question is, did you submit flight plans? Okay, so these questions cover quite a bit. So I would not have been able to get around the world if it wasn't for the support team that I had back in the UK. So Eddie and Ahmed, who run GASE, which is General Aviation Services Egypt. The Egypt bit is a bit confusing. They used to be based in Egypt, but they're not based in Egypt anymore. So I wouldn't have been able to get around the world if it wasn't for those guys. Now, Eddie watched my tracker. He did all the flights, he did all the routing and organised permissions, etc. I sorted visas out for Russia myself when I went, and we worked with a chap called Evgeny who runs a company called Mac Aviation, and together Mac Aviation and Eddie from GASE got me through Russia, no problems. We did have to file flight plans in Russia, but actually Evgeny did that for me, so that was really quite straightforward. And Russia was good because there was two of us. I flew through Russia with Norman, so that worked actually quite well, the two of us together. It definitely de-risked it a little bit. I felt that was good to have some company there as well. But back to the support. So Eddie will sort of sort out the route, and he was incredible. All the social media posting, that he did that, and it took a huge amount of workload off me. I didn't need to do that. And the one thing that I will say, having Eddie sitting there 24/7 watching me when I was flying, and he stayed up all hours of the night, that was so reassuring, and it really helped. So thank you. An aircraft started up, so I don't know how well this is going to come out now, but it should be okay. So yeah, flight support really was all down to Eddie and GASE. They did a great job, and it's quite a common question. How can I go around the world? How can I do these long range flights? The easiest thing for me to do is to put Eddie and GASE's details in the link description below, the link, and you can just get in contact with them. But they were very, very good, and often sort of slightly unnoticed really, because obviously it's just me flying in the aircraft, but there are other people in the background that made this happen, and it wouldn't have happened without them. It's like any expedition really. Yeah, I was the guy in the aircraft flying it, so you kind of get the glory really but actually in the background there's a lot of other people that help make it happen. So Eddie, thanks mate. I wouldn't have got around the world if it wasn't without you, so I'm very, very, very grateful. So that kind of covers a lot of the support questions and things. Okay, when you ordered the aircraft, what extra optional equipment did you request? This aircraft is completely standard. You could buy one tomorrow from Magni and just ask them to have the same tank that I had, and you'll be ready to go, basically. You had an iPad, I've answered that. Please provide details of the avionics. Okay, that's good. Let's do that now. Hopefully this will work. So, the avionics are here, guys. I had the Garmin 795 here. I've got trig transponder, trig radio, which worked really well. That's really the avionics. The rest of the aircraft is all standard. You've got your T's and P's here, fuel gauge, airspeed indicator, altimeter. The Garmin GDL50 would sit down here. But in terms of the actual avionics, it was a fairly simple setup. But what I had worked really, really well. Really well. And again, if you're looking to buy a Magni, just tell them you want the same aircraft as what I had, and they'll make one for you. Did you ever have difficulty communicating with different air traffic controllers across the various countries? No, that was easy. Do not be frightened of speaking to air traffic controllers in other countries. Honestly, it was easy. In Russia, they spoke perfect English. I could understand them. Sometimes I'd have to use the sat phone to call them because I lost contact with them. But honestly, even flying into some of the bigger airports that I did in America, some of the big international ones, you might think that's quite daunting. But a good air traffic controller will make it easy for you. So don't even worry about that. Okay, so effectively what did I do for weather? I used a fantastic app called Windy, which is really, really good. And also you can get METs and TAFs and things from the local areas. Let me just have a look to tell you what app I was using. Aero Weather and Windy were the two apps. But actually that's one of the things that I did, it's really as part of the support that Eddie gave me with GASE. I always used to chat with Eddie about the weather and how it's all looking and stuff. And actually one of the things that was massively helpful was we would talk in flight. So the tracker that I showed you earlier has an app which you can put on your phone, and it's called Garmin EarthMate. Now what that would enable me to do is, whilst I was flying, I could send messages back and forth to Eddie, and he would give me updates on what the weather was looking like at the destination. Also, interesting things that I remember flying over a particular lake. I'm sure it was a lake somewhere, and he sent me a message saying that's so-and-so lake. And so he kind of knew more about where I was flying than I did. It was good. So yeah, in terms of weather, those are the two apps that I used. There is a question about finances. Oh, okay. Typical airport landing and takeoff fees. Basically aren't any in Europe. There basically aren't any in America, and Russia was all sort of prepaid. So that wasn't really a problem. I don't think I ever paid for any hangar fees. When people realised I was flying around the world, they thought I'd just fallen out the last rain cloud once they looked at my gyro, and people wouldn't really want to take any money from me. Average fuel cost, that's an interesting one. That's a very interesting one. Russia was all prepaid. America, it was cheap as chip. Fuel is cheap out there. A lot of people in America were complaining about how expensive the fuel was, but come over here, it's a lot dearer here. For me, I thought America was brilliant. The fuel was cheap. Best flying in the world is in, for me, in my experience, the best flying was in, the easiest flying was in America. It's so well set up out there. It was incredible. That kind of answers quite a lot of questions, guys, and I think, you know, please do, I may be slow because I'm quite busy, but please do send me any questions and I'll always get back to them, whether I answer them on email or I put them into a vlog like this. I'll always do my best to answer the questions that I can. Anything I can do to try and help anyone else who's interested in flying a long way or around the world or whatever, I'll always do my best. Eddie will be there at GASE. He is very, very good, so just drop him a line. He will absolutely be able to help you. He's been doing it for years and he has a lot of experience. What else? That's generally about it. I just wanted to give you guys, I've been wanting to do this video for ages, to be honest, but I've been busy. My speaking tour starts this week on Sunday, so I hope to see you all there. That's about it, guys, for the time being. Got some more cool flying coming up, and I'm gonna be doing quite a lot of vlogging of the speaking tour and other things that I've got going on. There's a lot of travel. I'm out of the country in 3 different countries just in November alone, so I'm gonna make some travel vlogs, and yeah. All right, guys, thank you for the support. Out for now.